Hey guys, Brad here with 2 Hour Character Creation. We're going to be working on Goku in this video, and the base mesh that I'm using, it's a base mesh that I had bought from QBrush, and I'll put the link in the description below. But you can use any base mesh you want, whether you go get that one or one of your own, or you just build the character out of Z-spheres or cylinders and spheres, whatever works for you. Okay, I just want to kind of give you a little heads up that the base mesh that we're working with is one that I got from QBrush, and you can find that base mesh at the link below. All right, let's get started. So let me bring in the actual picture here. And the first thing you're going to see here is that we really only need this character for the head and the arms. Everything else is pretty much going to be clothing. I'm going to actually make those probably out of separate pieces so we can kind of not really focus too much on that. Let's focus first on blocking out the overall shape here, because this is kind of like a very thin little dude. This person's very muscular, but I'm going to ignore the vast majority of the body. I'm only going to focus on basically the top part of the character here. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to just bulk this guy up. So I'm going to come down here and choose my inflate brush. The inflate brush is better than the move brush in this sense because it inflates everything in different directions. I don't have to worry about, like, if I use my move brush and try and pull it out, it might get like weird looking like that, right? So I'm not going to overdo it. He's muscular, yes, but he's not, made of marshmallows. So I'm just going to kind of come here with my little inflate brush and inflate the areas I think need to be inflated. The tricep area, maybe inflate the shoulder a little bit. Don't overdo it. We don't want it to look ridiculously cartoony. We want it to still feel somewhat decent size. We're not going to worry too much about the hands because his hands are going to be in fists if we're going to follow this pose. And we're going to make sure the neck is big. He's got some pretty broad shoulders here, so I'm going to come here and just inflate that a little bit. Even though we're not going to use the body much, I do want to kind of get myself a feeling of exactly how broad his shoulders are, his hips. I'm going to kind of like just come in here and just proportions out a little bit, but I'm going to ignore the legs for the most part because he's wearing pants. All right, so I'm just going to kind of just do a little bit, but what you don't want to do is this. Don't like just make it crazy, right? Just like Popeye. Just, look at the musculature and try and do your best to kind of make this feel a little bit more like it needs to. Now I'm going to my move brush here, and I'm just going to kind of, again, just do a little tweaking to the shape. You'll note that I'm not subdividing yet. I'm not doing any of those things. I'm just basically blocking out the overall musculature of this guy. He's very broad-shouldered. In fact, I might kind of come in here and just push this part up a little bit in the back of the underarm there, just to kind of get that little bit more of a separation here. Again, even though we're not using this guy's torso, really, I do want to have an idea as to how it looks in terms of the overall shape here. So I'm going to broaden this a little bit. And again, once we add more points, it'll make more sense in terms of like the actual musculature, but I think that we're okay there. Let's come here now and I'm going to make the neck a little bit less. And the head has a very distinct look, right? So we're going to need to do a lot of adjustments here to the neck, to the face, I should say. So I'm just going to come here, and the face has really unique proportions. The nose barely exists, so I'm going to come here and lightly smooth down this this nose, taper it a little bit, make it a little bit thinner. He's got a very small mouth and nose area, so I'm just going to kind of like make that a little bit smaller. Go from the side view, make sure I kind of make that nose a little bit smaller. I'm going to zoom in here though and make sure that I keep the point of the nose. Now, one of the things you can do is hold down Control, mask out that little point area, and then smooth down the rest of it, so it keeps that point, but then you get that nice curve look there, right? And now I can kind of come in here and get my move brush a little bit bigger, narrow that nose a touch more. Okay. The eyes are very unique too, so I'm going to come here with my move brush. Now, you can see here the eyes, I'm going to undo that. The eyes are actually part of the head here. So if I go to my polyframe, you can see the eyes are part of this. So I want to separate these eyes, okay? So here's what I'm going to do. If I hit my polyframe, you can see here, he's got all kinds of different, what are called polygroups, and we're going to talk about those in a little bit. Polygroups are independently selectable. So the way to select them is hold down Control and Shift at the same time. You know, Control is your mask, right? But Control and Shift is your selection tool. If I Control, Shift, and then tap on the eyes, it's isolating that purple polygroup, okay? Now I can come down here and hit Split Hidden, and now you're going to see in my subtool palette, the eyes are separate. I'm going to come here to the lips and smooth those down a little bit because he doesn't really have distinct lips so much as pretty much just a little line in his face. So I'm going to kind of come in here bring this down. I'm going to hit B for brush, P for pinch, grab my pinch brush, make this a little bit bigger, my brush, and pinch this down a little bit here, just to kind of bring those lines a little bit closer together. Now I'll go back to my move brush, and I have to really adjust the shape of his face a little bit here. It's kind of, I'm going to smooth out that chin, but he's got a very wide jaw, kind of like this, right? And then it kind of comes up. The ears are actually fairly large, so I'm going to kind of bring these out a little bit here. The eyes have a very distinct kind of a square look, so I'm going to kind of do this. I'm going to go to solo mode here so I can kind of get behind the eye and see better what I'm doing. I want this bottom part here to be kind of almost a straight line, right? Because it's the way that it looks. It's almost like a triangular opening. So I'm going to bring this up like this. Now I'm going to hold down Control and change my mask pen to mask lasso. It's just what I prefer to use. I'm going to mask out this bottom part here so that I can get my move brush and pull the rest of this down and not have that go down. So I'm just kind of making that almost like a triangular shape here. And you can see now I can kind of bring this up, right? Make sure you look at this from the side as well, so you can push this back. Remember, you're not going straight out, we're wrapping around the head. So I'm going to kind of get that, that triangular feel to the eye here. So I'm just using my move brush, right? Still very low res. I'm going to clear my mask a little bit. Don't care at the top of the head, he's going to be wearing lots of hair, right? So there we go. Let's get the eyes back in. And the eyes need to be much bigger. The eyes are almost flat when you think about it. So I'm going to go to my move tool, W. Now you can't see it. The move tool is like somewhere off here. So I'm going to go to my little Google Maps icon so it snaps to the center. And then I'm going to scale these way up and then push these back into the head and then push it this way into the head. So I don't want to try, I want to try to avoid flattening them too much. Even though they have kind of a flat look, I'm going to go to my blue box here, flatten them a little bit and then bring it forward just to kind of make these eyes feel a little bit more like they do in the image here. But I do want to go back to my Google Maps icon, rotate them a little bit just so they kind of rotate around. Go back to the head, get my move brush, and I'll hold down the Alt key so I can kind of pull the clay toward the camera. Okay, so you're just going to see that you might need to adjust the positioning of these things. These eyes are not really what you'd call anatomical. I'm going to hit Control D a couple times to smooth these out, just so I can kind of get a feel for how they will smooth and how they'll look, right? So you might need to adjust their position a little bit, and it's easier to do that, I think, when they're already the right shape. Get back to the head here. You can see kind of where we are. Again, I just want to kind of get a little bit of that look of a very thin nose up in the bridge area. Right. All right. Hit 9, do a quick save here. And before we do anything else, really, I want to just block in the clothes. So I just want to kind of take a look at what I need to do. And I need to give him a top here. He's got two tops, actually. And the belt is going to be a nice way to kind of separate the upper from the lower body. The lower body here, the legs, I'm going to build them almost entirely from scratch. This actual body here, I'm not going to use much of it at all. So ignore most of this. I do want to keep the arms. Now if I go here to polyframe, you can see I can actually pretty easily separate the things that I want. So again, we can do that Control Shift thing where we can isolate certain parts. So for example, I'm going to Control Shift and then click on, say, the pelvis area, and then Control Shift click on it a second time, and it's going to hide that. Now I can Control Shift click again on the legs, the lower legs, the feet. Okay, so now they're all hidden. And I can come down here and hit Split Hidden. So now the legs are their own separate thing. It just gives me the ability to kind of work on them separately. You're going to see if I turn polyframe off and then go to solo, you know, I do have kind of an opening up here. It's not really a big deal, but just know that is the case. So now I have the parts separated. I am going to want to build the clothes out first before I do anything else, just so I have a feeling for what, what the proportions look like. All right. So the first thing I want to do is work on the pants. That's going to be the clearest indication of how this guy looks. So I'm going to build the pants. I could use the legs as a starting point, but the legs are so kind of like toned, it's not really useful. So I want to come here, and I will probably actually use the pelvis part. So let's go here to the legs. I'm going to go to polyframe again so I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and tap on the pelvic part. And now I want to come and add a little bit more of those points. So I'm going to go here, close up subtool, come down here to visibility. And you're going to see, if I hit grow a couple times, it's going to kind of grow the visibility of what's visible. And this is really all I really need. I want to have a little bit of the thigh, and then maybe to about like right there. Okay, and now I'm going to come down here and hit split hidden again. So now this is going to be the start of the pants. I'll hit my move brush here and come here and just adjust the width of this a little bit, because again, I want these to be a little bit broader. And I'm going to turn off the legs for now. So now I'm going to bring in the actual pants. I'm going to build them from basically a cylinder. So I'll go to my insert primitive brush and choose cylinder. I have symmetry on, so I'm going to tap and drag 2 cylinders here. I can turn off polyframe now. And I'll go to my move tool. Now I'm working on either side of the center here. So if I need to scale anything up or down, remember, come over here and turn on local sim so that you can scale things proportionally. I'll come over here and go choose a different brush just to make that go away. Now I hit W. I'm going to kind of move my little legs, my little pant legs, I should say, where they should be, right about here. I'm going to scale them vertically, okay? And I can kind of rotate them a little bit here. I'm just going to move them right here. I can turn on the legs to kind of give me an idea as to how long I want these to be. Remember, he's wearing kind of boots, so I want these pants to kind of stop a little shy of the boots there. Okay, now I want to make them a little bit wider, a little bit broader, so I'm going to grab my little yellow box here and crank this up, and then scale it in the blue box to make the legs a little bit smaller, right? So I'm just going to kind of go back and forth until I get the length that I want, kind of like this. His legs are very, very kind of straight here. Now I'm going to go to my gear, and I'm going to choose taper. Now I want to taper this a little bit toward the top. So if I taper this, if I grab this little orange cone and pull in a little bit, it's just going to taper them in the tiniest bit. Okay, go back to my gear, choose accept. Maybe I'll even use my bend curve a little bit. So I'll go back to my gear and choose bend curve. See, we got my 2 little dots here. Come down here and grab my orange cone and pull once to give myself 1 little dot. That'll kind of just give me the ability to maybe give it a little hint of a bend. Okay, like this. And I want to scale this up a little bit. So I tap on this cone here, this orange dot, and then go my white cone and just kind of scale it up a little bit just to kind of make them come together. I want this to overlap entirely with the shorts here. So that's good enough. I'm going to go my little gear, hit accept, and hit Q to get that move tool to go away. And now I get my move brush, because I want, again, like I said, I want these to overlap a little bit. Let's go to solo mode. You can see they don't quite overlap, right? So I'll get my move brush and just pull this forward a little bit here so that they completely overlap. You see here in the back, not quite overlapping. Now if you want to, instead of moving the legs, you want to move the pelvis, just control tap in space to invert that mask. You can kind of grab this and just make sure they overlap entirely, like that. Okay, I'm just going to hold down shift and smooth those legs so they're further apart for now, and then I could go like say 300, and as you can see now that works a little bit better. So a little bit of a trial and error process there. Right, but now I have it all one piece. I'm going to turn Dynamesh off. 27,000 is too much, so I'm going to come down here to Zero Mesher. I'm going to Zero Mesh by half and let it remesh. Now I have 14,000. I'm going to remesh by half again so that I have only 7,000, and that's probably pretty good. I can start with this. So I'll just get my move brush here and just lightly, shaping this here. So now I have that. I have the pants. We're going to obviously do a lot more with the pants, but I just wanted to have them blocked in roughly so that we have a starting point here. Okay, you can just, we're going to add the folds and all that kind of stuff, but for now I just wanted to have something in place. Now for the shirt, we want to do a couple things. You want to have this kind of blue sleeveless shirt and also the kind of top part of the orange. So we need to make 2 different shirts basically. Let's go back to the top here, and I'm going to come here with this guy and hit duplicate. I'm going to duplicate the whole upper body and then go to solo. What I'm going to do is go to polyframe and just kind of like keep the parts that I want to keep to make the shirt. The blue shirt, you can see, doesn't go all the way down, at least that we can see it. I mean, it probably does, but let's just kind of make the torso. So I'll hold down Control and Shift to get to my selection tool, tap on the torso, I'll Control Shift tap on it again and start hiding the parts that I want to keep. So if I Control Shift, maybe grab that, I might want to have a little bit more of the orange, so I'm going to Control Shift tap on the orange as well. And now let's come down here and hit split hidden. So now I want to come down here and choose the thing that I just split off, which is this. Okay. Now I want to kind of get rid of some of these. I'm going to turn on double-sided again so I can see the back of this. So let's hold down Control, Shift, and Alt. All 3 buttons, Control and Shift to get to your selection tool, Alt to make it the reverse. And I can actually change this from my select rectangle to a select lasso. So now I can do this, Control Shift and Alt, and then just drag out a little selection to hide the faces that I don't want. So you see I've hidden those ones. This is all I want for the blue shirt. Okay, almost all I want for the orange shirt as well. So once I've hidden those little parts, and by the way, those parts that are hidden, if I hold on Control and Shift and then just tap and drag off the model, it'll flip back and forth, just so you know. Control Shift Tap brings everything back, just so you know. Okay, so this is my shirt. I'm going to hit Delete Hidden. Now I'm going to duplicate this because I'm going to need to have a version of this for the orange shirt as well. So I'm just going to hit Duplicate. I'm still in solo mode, so I can't see it. This one here is going to be my blue. Okay, so let's get out of polyframe mode, and I'm just going to get I'm going to get out of solo mode as well. And I'm just going to turn off, turn off this duplicate head and arms that we have here. Just hide the duplicate shirt. So now I just have this, right? And I can get my move brush, and I can kind of pull this out. Again, you hold down the Alt key and tap and drag, it'll pull the clay away from the, toward the camera or away from the model. So again, I'm just blocking out basically this little blue shirt here. I can pull this down, right? Pull this out a little bit, and I'm just giving myself a starting point for that blue shirt. It seems like it comes out a little bit over the shoulder, so I'll make my move brush small enough that I can kind of grab individual points and just adjust that appearance a little bit more. Okay, there you go. It's a little bit low on the front there, so I'll just move that down. All right, so we'll call that the blue shirt. I'm even going to come over here and change my material back to Zebra Paint, and I'm going to sample that blue and fill the shirt with that. All right, let's sample that orange, go to the pants and fill the pants with that. Let's sample the skin tone, roughly anyway, and go to the body and fill that. Let's go to the eyes and fill that with white. Sample that blue again, come down to the boots, right? So again, we're just blocking out basic colors here. All right, so that's the blue shirt here. Let's go to the orange shirt. So let's go back to this duplicate that we have. Okay, I'm gonna go to solo mode, it's not duplicate. And let's get that orange on there. So as you can see, this is much more of a V-neck. So I'm going to go to polyframe, and you can see here that I want to get rid of some of these points. So I'm going to, but if I do my Control Shift and Alt thing from the front, well, it's going to go through the back as well, which is fine. I'll get rid of the ones I don't want, say to about here. Okay, no, again, all I'm doing is Control Shift Alt and dragging. As long as it goes around some of those points, it'll make them go away. But remember, I can invert my selection. If I Control Shift Tap and drag, right now I have this, and I can see the ones that I've hidden. Now if I look at this from like a 3/4 angle and hold down Control Shift and Alt, I can now hide these, and what they're going to do, of course, is go back to the other group of faces. So the ones from the back, they're nice and gone now. Okay, these are the ones I want to get rid of. So I'm going to Control Shift Tap and drag to inverse my visibility. Now you can see there I am. Right, maybe I want to get rid of like this little guy too. So again, note the camera angle here. I want to be able to do it so I can just hide the ones I don't want to get rid of, I don't want to have, but not lose the stuff in the back. Now I got that, right? I'm going to hit Delete Hidden. Now this is all ridiculously blocky, right? So how am I going to fix that? Well, I'm going to look at this from this angle. I'm going to first get my move brush, and I'm going to grab this middle point, which I want to be like the V part, and just kind of nudge that down a little bit, right, to get a head start. And now I'm going to hold down Control to get my mask lasso. I'm going to mask out that one little point. Okay? Come down here now. We have a slider called Polish by Features. And what it's going to do is it's going to polish the edges here. So if I do that, see how kind of like it polishes everything? It kind of smooths it out a little bit. Now, maybe I don't want it to do everything, so I'm going to kind of mask out the sides here. I want to kind of keep them wide, but polish my features a little bit. You see how it just kind of, the more you do it, the more it'll polish. So now it's giving me this nice smoothed out V-neck. I got my move brush and move this. Now, but it's still ugly in the sense that it's smoothed out, but it's only smoothed out because the points are way out of their normal position. So I'm going to clear my mask, Control Tap and drag, and say, okay, let's come down here, keep the same number of faces, but rebuild it. There you go. So that's a lot better. I'm going to adjust this shape a little bit here, and then remesh one more time. There you go. So now we have that. You can't see it, so I'm not, because it's the same size as everything else. So again, I'm going to close out my subtool palette, come down here to deformation, and there's a slider that will inflate things basically uniformly like that. I'm not going to keep going crazy with that. I'm just going to inflate it just to the point where it's better. And now I get my move brush, and remember, you hold down Alt and tap and drag from left to right, and that will pull that toward the camera. So it pulls it away from the mesh. And now I can just adjust this a little bit here until I'm happy with the way it looks. I mask out the sleeves, pull that part in a little bit, right? And there, we're on our way. So again, just kind of adjust this to how you see fit. Put it where you want. And again, the thing is, we don't care a whole lot if the blue shirt is poking through, because we can always just go to the blue shirt and with my move brush, hold down Alt and tap and drag from right to left and just push that behind the shirt. Now what about the torso of this guy? We don't need it at all. I'm going to select him, go to solo mode, go to polyframe, Control Shift click on that part, Control Shift click a second time, right? And now I can just hit delete hidden because we don't need it. Now I can just push that part in. So we're getting there, right? I'm just blocking out the stuff and there we go. So a little bit of trial and error with this shirt in terms of like getting the actual shape that we want, but I think that we're on our way now. Okay, so obviously he's got that blue belt which tucks in most of this shirt, so we're not going to be seeing much of this at all. Let me just fill the pants with the same color there. Okay, so let's get that belt in here. So I'm just going to come here to my subtool palette and go to Insert and choose Cylinder. And let's just hit my W key to scale this down. I'm going to hover over the blue, hit C to copy that blue, and then hit Fill. And I'm going to put this where the belt needs to be. I'm going to scale it down vertically, right, until it's roughly the size that I want. Right, I'm going to put this again where it needs to be. I don't care about whether or not the pants or the shirt are showing through. I'll make them conform to what the belt looks like, because that's the main part here. Is that's what's going to tell us about the shape. Look at it from underneath here. You might need to adjust it by moving the blue scale box in a little bit. So now we kind of know where we want that belt to be. Maybe I'll just scale it down vertically a little bit here and kind of put it where it needs to be, like right here. Go to my orange shirt here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control to get my mask lasso and lasso out that part. Then Control Tap to invert that. And now I can actually come down here to my deformation tab, go to Inflate and bring it negative. I'm just going to kind of bring it in a little bit. It's just a nice little uniform way to do that. I can now Control Tap to invert the mask and get my move brush, whatever, and kind of adjust this however I see fit. And I know that underneath there it's not going to be affected by it. Okay, let's pull this out a little bit here. All right, there you go. I can do the same thing with the pants. So I can select the pants, mask out the parts that's underneath the belt, and I can just do a little bit of adjustment to them if I want to, just to kind of make sure that everything fits okay. All right, so now let's go here to our orange shirt. It needs to be adjusted a little bit here. So I'm going to move brush, and I'm going to mask out the middle so that doesn't go anywhere, and then get the outer part and kind of widen that out a little bit. Then maybe adjust this shape a little bit more. Okay. The arms are a little bit wider, right? So let's do that. Let's come here to the main guy, okay? And I'm going to go to solo mode. And let's go to wireframe, polyframe. You're going to see here, I can actually just kind of like isolate these guys and move them. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift, and I'm going to change this back from my select lasso to my select rectangle. This tends to work better. Control Shift click to isolate that. Control Shift click on it again, and now I'm just going to Control Shift click on the rest of this. Now these are a bunch of different little poly groups, so instead of Control Shift clicking on all of those, I can go Control Shift and Alt and then just drag a big old red rectangle to hide those. So now I've hidden everything but the middle part, and I can actually split those off. So I'm just going to come down here and hit Split Hidden. So now I have the torso and the arms as separate pieces. I can work on the arms separately and just go to my Move tool, hit my little Google Maps icon, and just slide them out a little bit like this to kind of make his arms a little bit broader if I want. Okay. Now the arms are a little bit scrawny compared to the picture, so I'll go back to Inflate. Let's kind of inflate these a little bit, get my move brush, make sure that everything is everything makes sense in terms of the overall shape. Inflate brush, inflate these up a little bit here. Okay, and you can see here, maybe need to inflate the top part a little bit to bring the shoulders up. I can actually go here and move the whole shoulders down a little bit too, just to kind of bring them lower. Go back to the orange shirt, my move brush, and kind of like my move brush, I'm just going to push this down a little bit. Go to my blue shirt and push that down a little bit. Right, you can see here is just a bunch of back and forth with this because these are layers, and layers are kind of annoying sometimes. Okay, go back to my blue shirt, pull that out a little bit. Use an inflate brush as well, just to inflate the blue. Okay. Okay, go back to the arms. Come in here and just do some tweaking to the shape with my move brush here. Again, still haven't subdivided anything, so if part of this looks a little bit rough, that's going to change probably once we get some subdivisions going on, but not there yet. I'm just trying to shape these arms a little bit more. I get my move tool and maybe rotate these arms down a little bit here. And as far as the hands go, again, they're fists, and we can kind of work on them separately if we want to. So again, we have the arms. You can see here, these like are open here. So if I go to wireframe, you can see that they're open, and that's kind of weird. I don't like that. So I'm gonna come up here and hit close holes. It'll close them for me. Okay, so I can smooth them out a little bit if I want to, and then we're good to go. Now let's go to let's actually make the hands be an entirely separate piece. So I'm gonna hold down Control and Shift, click on the shoulders, Control and Shift, click on them again, and now I'm gonna start Control Shift clicking on these different poly groups to about there. And now I'm going to hit split hidden. So now again, the hands are their own things. Let's start naming this. I'm going to go here to the torso and hit rename torso. These are the hands, so I'll just rename that hands. These are the arms, so I'll rename that arms. And you can see here, because I split them off, they're open at the wrist. So let's just go to close holes again. So now we have that. Okay. We can even zero mesh if we want to, because you can see here, these are very blocky here. So let's hit zero mesh with same. It'll rebuild these, and it'll give us better edge flow anyway. So now we have this, and you can see here, I have to make sure I fill that with the skin tone, because when you remesh, you lose your paint. But at least now it works a little bit better for us. Let's go here to the hands, and once again, close holes. That way, it's not open. And the torso, let's go to that. Take a look. You need to close some holes there too, right? So let's go to close holes. It's just a way of kind of making it, because the edges, the open edges kind of act a little bit goofy sometimes. So all we need for him is for it to look like he's got a torso, right? But this way we can work on the hands and not have the arms get in the way, all right? So now we've blocked out virtually everything except for the hair and obviously the belt parts, but now we can start working on actually blocking in some shapes. I'm gonna throw in really quickly some little wristbands here. So, by the way, we still have this kind of spare version of this character, these head things, so I'm just gonna get rid of those because I delete that. So I'm on the hands, and let's go to my insert primitive brush. I'm going to insert cylinders, drag out 2 cylinders like this. Right away, split unmasked points, and then select those. Google Maps to center it, rotate it to make it roughly wristband area. Scale it down. Again, we'll make these look like wristbands later on. This is just blocking out the shapes. And you have to use your camera a lot sometimes when you're doing this kind of stuff to make sure that you're putting them in the right spot. Okay, you go to your move brush and just kind of adjust this a little bit too. You don't need to only use the move tool. Okay, because these are wristbands, they're not made of steel. They can be, I'm just going to smooth it down a little bit here, but just to kind of block out where they go. Okay, let's make sure that the arms are a little bit less pale. Okay, so we got that. Let's actually look at adding some stuff to the face. We have to add details to the belt, but who cares about that? We'll do that later. All right, so let's again just looking at the arms here. I'm just going to inflate these a little bit more so they feel a little bit more muscular. There's definitely some work to be done in kind of like keeping the shirts from overlapping and stuff, but that's okay. All right, anyway. Let's look at the face. So select the torso here. I'm going to hit Control D, which is the shortcut to subdivide. That way I can just kind of lightly smooth this part out. Okay. You can come here to the ear. Now we still have very, very low res. It's only 5,000 points. But I can go to my damp standard brush, for example, at this stage and maybe kind of just give myself an indication of where there are actual ear parts. Not much of one, but it's getting there. Let's go to the eyes and give us some pupils. So I'm going to select the eyes. I already divided them a couple times if you recall. Hit Control D. I give myself about 750,000 points here on the eyes. And I'm going to come down to my paintbrush, hit B for brush, P for paint. Grab my paintbrush. I'm going to change my stroke to drag rectangle, my alpha to this top circle one. Go to my focal shift and crank this all the way down to -100 and choose black as my color. And you can see where the eyes are. They're kind of like, where are they? They're kind of like right here. They're very close to the beginning, to the center here. It's very weird looking. I'm not really sure what's going on with that, but we'll give that a shot. Maybe I have to kind of move this down a little bit more. I'll go to the torso here and move that part down a little bit more. Okay. Go back to the eyes. My paintbrush. Like that. Okay. So again, you put those pupils wherever you think. I'm just going by what it seems like to me. He needs eyebrows. So what we're going to do here for eyebrows is a very quick mask and extract. So we're going to go to the torso here, pull down Control. I'm going to change this to my mask pen because I need to be able to mask out an area. But you can see here it's too blocky, right? So I'm going to clear my mask. Hit Control D one more time to give myself a few more faces. And now I can mask out a little bit more clearly. Okay, trying to get a feel for what these eyebrows look like here. Okay, they look pretty much like this rectangle, so I'm just going to go with this here. I'm going to come down here to my subtool palette, hit extract. That's a little much, so 0.02 is too much, 0.01 maybe, let's hit extract again. It's fine, we'll hit accept. Alright, so now you can see this. Let's first, before we do anything else, go back to the torso, Control tap and drag to clear that mask. Now let's go to my extract here and solo this. Very, very thick, but that's okay. There's still a mask on them, so I'll Control tap and drag. I'm going to smooth that down. You can see it smooths down quite a bit, really quickly. And there we go. So I hit polyframe. You can see here it's all kinds of ugly. So I'm going to come down here and remesh with same. Boom. Now it'll rebuild it much more cleanly, right? And now I can just kind of come in here and just smooth this out a little bit. All right. Now, if you want this to be nice and sharp and nice and clean, there are ways to do that. We can also just go to our Move tool, hold down Alt and tap to find it. And if I hold down Control Alt, I can just rotate this so that it's in line with, you know, our eyebrow here. And I can go to my gear. I can choose flatten. I can try and flatten it a little bit from one end. I can also grab the gear, this cone, instead of pulling it in, I can pull it out, and it's going to actually kind of like go out and then become flat further out like that, which is a weird thing to do, but it sometimes works pretty well. I'm going to flatten it from this side. So basically turning this into a rectangle, to a square, right? Now I'm going to go to my gear, choose accept. And I'm also going to now go to my gear and choose bend curve. Okay, and I have these three dots. I can tap this dot here and choose scale and scale it down a little bit, which is like the same thing as tapering basically. Right, but now I can just kind of like adjust the position of this if I want. I can grab this top one here, scale that out a little bit as well. So just know that these deformers that we've been using recently, they have a lot of purposes. They have a lot of uses, right? So you can kind of like come in here and just, you know, make them work for you. I'm guessing that's how his eyebrows look. It's kind of hard to tell with his hair being in the way. So I'm just going to go with this. Go to my gear, choose accept. All right. So now we're getting a little bit closer probably. Again, his face needs a lot more work. We haven't really done much there, but that's okay. I'm just blocking in shapes right now. So now we're going to block in some shapes for the hair, and then we can kind of start doing details. Okay, now we're going to do the hair, and it's going to require us to be a little bit creative here. Now there isn't a pretty easy way to do it, but it's using a tool we haven't used before, so I'm going to try and use only tools that we know. But if you look closely, the hair's got these little grooves in it, and obviously it's like a tapered type of cylinder. So I want to try and find a way to get those grooves in there without having to worry about sculpting them. And so we're going to use radial symmetry, which we've used recently. So here's what we got to do. We have to make sure we do this exactly this way. So I'm going to come over here to my subtool palette. Okay, I'm going to come here and hit Insert Cylinder. Very important that you do the Insert Cylinder. Don't use the brush because I want this to be smack dab in the center of our scene. I'm going to come here to Solo. So I'm looking just at this one here. And I want to actually swap this out for a cylinder that I can kind of dictate how many subdivisions it has. Okay, so I hit my W key, and I'm going to go to my gear, and I'm going to choose Cylinder 3D, and it's going to give me this cylinder. I think by default it's got like 16 little divisions around here. If you look at here from the side here, you get these little cones, and this little red cone here It says H divide 16. That's how many divisions are in the horizontal axis here. So I'm going to make this 32. It's important that we get this exactly right. So we're going to go to 32 here. It's going to matter. So make sure it's 32. From the up and down here, I just want to have a few so that it can bend. So I'm going to go like to say 16. Okay, or again, this one, the up and down is not majorly important, but the side to side definitely is. So I would say something like, you want to see a few like 8 or 9 or 10 on the side here. Okay, that's what I want. Go to my little gear, go back to my gizmo. Now I'm looking at my side camera. I'll hold down Shift and tap and drag to snap it to the side. And now I'm going to hold down Shift and rotate this little white circle. If you hold down Shift, it'll do it, it'll snap it. So the reason why I wanted to make sure we only had 32 going around here is because I want to take every other one of these and kind of like push them in so we have a nice little grooved surface. To do that, we're going to use radial symmetry. I don't want to do it one at a time. That would take forever. Let's come up here to transform, which is where our symmetry exists. I'm going to turn on activate symmetry. I'm going to turn on Y and R and turn off the X. Okay, so now I want to keep the radial count at 8. All right, because I have 32 here, which means every fourth one, because 8 goes into 32 4 times, I can grab and move inward. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hold down Control to get my mask pen and just mask out this one little point here, this one point. And because radial symmetry is on, you'll see it's masking out that same point all the way around, right? Every fourth one. Now hold down Control and tap, and now I have just those edges visible, right? Let's go to your Move tool, W. Okay, make sure it's centered. Your little guitar pick or Google Maps icon will center it. I want to scale this in, but I'm not going to grab the yellow. If I grab the yellow box, it's going to scale in every direction, which means it's going to scale it down vertically as well, and I don't want that. So I want to scale it everywhere but vertically. In other words, I want to scale it in the green and the red. The best way to do that is not to use the green or the red, somewhat weirdly, is to use the blue. So if you know how the Alt key is always the opposite in ZBrush. So if I go to the blue, hold down Alt, and then scale, it'll scale it in everywhere but the blue. So it's kind of a weird thing, but I'm scaling it there. That way I'm scaling it just in the green and the red at the same time, so it's nice and even. Okay, I'll hit Q to make that move tool go away. I'll clear my mask, turn off polyframe here so I can see. You can see here I got these nice little grooves on here. So I want to make this a long bit of hair, right? So I'm going to come here, I'm going to turn off symmetry, go to transform and turn symmetry off. Look at this from the front. I'm going to move it off here to the side, scale it down a little bit, and then scale it up vertically. So I'm just going to give myself basically a longish thing. Now I want to taper this. Now you might get this thing happen. If I go to my gear and choose taper, sometimes you're going to get it snapped back to the original cylinder. And if that happens, just let me know. I'll show you a way to get around that. It does happen a lot. Now if I go to my little orange cone here, I'm going to pull this down so it tapers. So I have this nice kind of like tapered look here for the hair. I'm going to go to my gear and choose accept. Now from my side view, I might grab my green and just kind of like squash it in a little bit, right? I don't want it to be a pure cylinder. I want it to be kind of like a little bit flatter. Now I want to have one of these that I can kind of like come back to, because you can see there's lots of different shapes and sizes here. So I'm going to keep this one separate. This is my go-to. I have like a dark gray. I'll hit fill object. And now I'm just going to come over here to my subtool palette, hit duplicate, and hide the original. So now I have just this one here, and I'm going to just kind of go through and position these. They all have a very similar curve. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down Alt and then move my move tool down to the bottom here. That way as I move it, it'll move from the root. And I'm just going to kind of go to my move tool, put these roughly in position. I'm going to go to my little gear, choose bend curve. I have 3 little guys here. Just going to kind of bend it a little bit like this. Okay, go to my gear, hit accept, and now hold down Alt and bring this down. And what I'm going to do, basically, I'm not going to make you watch me do this. I'm just going to go through, put these where they have to go, hold down Control, right, and drag out copies, and just basically completely fill his head with these guys. Okay, so I'm going to start with the big ones on the top here. Hold down Alt, hold down Control, drag out a copy. If I need to, I can scale it up a little bit, scale it forward, right, and just kind of make these feel like the hair that I'm seeing in that picture. Alright, so I did most of the hair, just a lot of control dragging out copies and reshaping and resizing, just to kind of get the rough approximation of where the hair is going to go. Let's talk about doing things like the pants and stuff like that. I want these pants to start looking like the pants in this picture here. They really don't right now. So I'm going to go in the pants, and the overall definition of these don't really matter. These folds are kind of the big part here. And what I don't really want to do is get into a situation where I'm getting my standard brush and trying to sculpt these folds in. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way. It would work just fine in the long run, right? You can totally do that, and I might end up doing that. But I want to kind of show you a way that we could possibly keep, like these folds have very sharp edges to them. And I want to kind of see if we can kind of fake it a little bit. Not by faking it really, but by kind of using shapes instead of sculpting. So I'm going to hover over the orange here, hit C for color, then come here to my insert primitive brush. I'm going to choose insert cylinder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag out a cylinder here and go to my move tool and make sure local sim is turned on because I'm going to be scaling it on both sides. Hit my Google Maps icon to center it, and then I'm going to pull this basically into the leg like this, and then scale it down like so. And then I want to kind of like basically make this part of the actual leg. So I'm going to hit Q to get that move tool to go away, and go to my move brush, and I'm going to kind of like basically just grab this and pull this down like this, so that they essentially like the hard edge of this cylinder essentially is going to be part of the folds of these pants. Okay, now I can go to my move tool, hold down Control and drag out a copy like we've done a number of times before. I can scale these out a little bit, move them down, and again get my move brush if I need to and just adjust this. So this is no different really than sculpting out stuff, but it allows us to have a little more control over exactly where this is, because instead of trying to make the pants turn into folds, we can make the cylinders themselves essentially do the folding or the hard edged for us. Right, so I can now hold down Control again, drag out another copy, maybe scale this one up a little bit so that these are bigger folds. Then hit Q and go back to my move brush here and just kind of adjust this some more. Right, so like I'm just kind of getting myself some interesting looks here. Now I can also hold down Control and mask out. I'm going to go to my Control lasso here, my mask lasso here. I can mask out the top part and then kind of push in the rest and even smooth it out so that, you know, we kind of keep. Let's make sure I mask out a little bit more of this here. Let's move this out a little bit so we can kind of like push some of this back in there. I can insert another cylinder. Instead of reusing the same one, I can kind of like basically get a different version that might work better for the lower part of the knees. Scale this out a little bit, scale it longer. Right, so basically I'm trying to kind of try different ways to create these kinds of stylized folds in the pants. Okay, pull this out. Oops, go ahead and move brush here, sorry, and scale this out a little bit more like this. Okay, maybe even like pull it up so that it kind of is coming up like this to make this feel again a little bit less uniform. All right, something like that. I'm going to go to my insert primitive brush one more time and add one more right here. Scale it like this, scale it in. I want there to be a hard edged part of the pants right here as well. Okay, hit Q, get to my move brush, maybe just kind of adjust this a little bit so it stands out. Again, I can hold down Control if I want to and mask out the bottom part of this and then smooth this in, kind of push that in there so that, again, I maintain that edge a little bit here. So this looks a little bit goofy right now, obviously, but now I want to kind of combine all these. Now, first thing I'm going to do, this is going to sound weird, I'm going to turn off symmetry, hit X, turn symmetry off, because I want to use my move tool, the W key, and go to my gear. And this little gear has a bunch of deformers, but it also has the ability to essentially mesh these together, kind of like Dynamesh, but in a less destructive way. And it seems not to work when symmetry is turned on. So now I hit Remesh by Union. What you're going to see now, if I go to wireframe, it's basically kind of sewn these things together wherever they overlap. Go back to my gear again and accept. Okay, turn symmetry back on. The reason why I want symmetry back on is because when I remesh this, I want it to be symmetrical. And if symmetry is on, it will make it symmetrical. So as you remesh, right? And now I can lightly with the shift key, lightly smooth but all those folds that I kind of got for free with those cylinders will likely remain behind. They might not all remain behind, but you know, it's just kind of a cool way, in my opinion, to kind of really get some cool stylized folds without really having to do a whole lot of crazy sculpting. Okay, you can do some more too. I mean, there's nothing saying you have to be done with this, but that's one way to do it. I'm going to go here to my damn standard brush and kind of lightly kind of carve in some lines here. A couple of good brushes for these kinds of folds here. If I hit B for brush and then S, you're going to see there's a brush here called Standard Trails Pinch. It's very, very bottom. It's like the standard brush, but it just kind of has a little bit more of a hard edge. I'm going to go to solo mode here. So if I kind of scale it, if I kind of like sculpt this out and just go slow, it kind of builds on itself a little bit more, and it pinches the edges together. Now it's a low res mesh here, so it's not going to look amazing at the moment, but that's one way to work it. I'm going to go to my damn standard brush and maybe carve in a little bit here. And don't forget, you can hold down Alt the damn standard brush and pull out clay too, right? Damn standard by default carves in a thin line, but hold down Alt, it'll pull out a thin line. So you can kind of get some really nice little wrinkles that way as well. Okay, a little bit of smoothing here. So you can see the idea, right? It's not necessarily done beautifully in this case. I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm sorry, I'm going to hold down Inflate and inflate this a little bit here. But let's just go back to before that happened, right about here. I'm going to inflate these legs together a little bit here. Okay. Now I'm going to hold down Control and mask out the bottom part of these little part here that I don't really want. Control tap to invert, and my move brush and just kind of push that up and smooth it out just to kind of clean up the bottom there a little bit more. And now up top here, right by the belt, I'm going to go to my standard brush and just kind of do a few. Again, it's very low res right now, so it's not going to look pretty, but I want to start kind of like throwing in some indications of some folds where it kind of goes into the belt, right? Go to my damn standard brush, carve in little indentations there as well. And again, this is just to kind of get myself a head start, right? Nothing's set in stone at the moment. Just trying to kind of like start blocking out the indications here. So this is just meant to be kind of an idea as to how you can kind of do some kind of stylized folds. I think his legs need to be longer. This is part of the weirdness thing is that these legs are a lot longer here. So before I stop the video, go to W for my move tool, hold down Alt and hit my little orientation button to kind of reestablish this. I'm going to hold down Alt and move this up to the belt, and then in the green I'm just going to pull and kind of pull that down a little bit. Now I might not want the whole legs. Maybe I want to keep the kind of the pelvis the same. So I'm going to mask out to about the legs and then hold down Alt and then move the tool so that the pivot point at the legs here, and just elongate those legs a little bit. And now I can just go to my subtool palette, grab my little boots in W and just slide them down to kind of bring them more in line with what we're doing here. I think that was part of the problem, is that his legs were a little bit short. So there you go. Okay, so we made some progress there on just blocking out the shape of the pants here by using some primitive shapes. And again, take your time and make this look better, but I just wanted to kind of throw out some ideas there. I'm going to work on the top now. I'm going to keep with the orange stuff. So I'm going to go here with the top here. And again, you can see this currently is paper thin. If I turn it off double-sided, it's really only one-sided right now. And we don't want that. We want this to have some thickness to it. So the easiest way to do that is to use something we've kind of used before, but not really. So I'm going to go to solo mode and turn on double-sided just for a second. And I'm going to hit D. And it's going to say this has 0 subdivision levels. Do you want to auto-activate dynamic sub? I'll say always yes. And what this does is it shows me what this would look like if I had subdivided it a couple times. Okay. Now I'm going to close up subtool here and go to geometry, and you're going to see in my geometry tab we have this thing called dynamic subdiv, and you can see it's turned on right now. And that's what happens when you hit D. If I turn dynamic off or hit shift D, which is the same thing, it'll turn this off. This has a very weird little triangle thing going on here. So I'm going to actually, before I go too far, I'm going to I'm going to try and remesh this one more time. I'm going to come down here to remesh, but I'm going to turn off same and just type in 1 for 1000 and then see if I get something better, and that's a little bit better. So I just wanted to kind of adjust that. Now remember, when you remesh, you do lose your paint, so I'm going to make sure I fill it again. All right, anyway, so now I have this working a little bit better for me. And if I were to now keep solo on, turn dynamic on again, it's showing me what's happening. It's showing, when I turn dynamic on or hit the D key, it's showing me how it would look if it were smoothed or subdivided twice. How do I know it's twice? Because under dynamic, it's showing me here smooth subdivision levels 2. I'm going to bring this down to 0. In other words, I'm saying don't show me how it would look if it were subdivided. That's not what I'm after. What I'm actually after is thickness. So when this is on, I'm not looking to smooth this. I'm looking to add thickness. So if I crank up thickness, you can see here now I'm seeing some thickness, right? Now if I hit subdivisions, maybe go to 1. So now it's showing me how it would look if it were subdivided once and had thickness, right? I'm going to keep it at 0 for now, subdivision, but I want to have some thickness to it, all right? So now if I want to keep that thickness, because if I turn dynamic off or hit Shift D, it just goes away again. So if I want to keep it, just hit apply. So now it actually is this thick. It's got thickness to it now. Okay, so now it actually exists as an actual shirt. Now I can come in here and do some sculpting. The reason why I didn't keep that subdivisions is because I want to kind of like sculpt it a little more before I add the subdivisions to it. Now you can keep symmetry on or turn symmetry off. I'm going to turn symmetry off by hitting X and go, like, say, to my standard brush and just kind of like come in here and just start roughing in the idea of where the folds are going to be. Okay, you can see here again, I want to have them feel like they're kind of bunching up as they go into the belt here, right? So you can see here it's got some folds over the shoulders. So I'm going to come in here and do that. You can see here in the back, I might need to get my move brush and adjust this a little bit here because it's a little off. So let's just do that. You can see it's just got a little bit of a weird thing happening here. So I'm just going to nudge that point by point really fast. There you go. But I want to kind of start getting the habit too of looking at it from all directions. Even though you might not see it from every direction, you never know, especially if you want to do something like a print. You want to make sure that it looks good from the back as well, because 3D prints are they're visible from all directions. So let's go to solo mode so I can get around the arm and just kind of do a little. And you do want to think about the way cloth folds. I'm kind of like guessing in some cases, but for the most part, think about the way clothes bunch up. Okay. So now I have something like this, and again, it's still very low res, obviously, but it's better to do this at a low resolution and then add points than it is to try and do everything at a high res. I can go to my damp standard brush here, for example, and kind of carve in to kind of emphasize some of the contrast here. I'm going to hold down Control and mask out the part that's covered by the belt, and then I can get my move brush and actually kind of pull some of this out. You can see because it's masked off where the belt is, right? I'm not going to have to worry about it coming through necessarily because I've masked out those areas for the most part, right? So I can kind of like just make them overlap the belt a little bit so it feels like cloth overlapping, the belt that's kind of cinching it in, right? Remember, with my move brush, I'm just holding on the Alt key and tapping and dragging. That kind of pulls it toward the camera, so it kind of makes it bunch out a little bit, kind of like that, right? Something like so. Okay. Now I can clear my mask. Make sure you clear your mask before you subdivide, and hit Control D. That'll subdivide a little bit. You can see here those folds kind of stay behind, right? They're still there. Let's go to damp standard and kind of carve in a little bit more to kind of make this a little bit more noticeable. I can hold down Alt with damp standard and kind of like pull out kind of more of a ridge, so you can get that kind of like the hard-edged look as well. So just remember that you don't need to kind of use a whole lot of different brushes. You can use a lot of brushes that basically just do the opposite just by holding down the Alt key. Okay, so I can carve in, hold down Alt and pull out, hold down Alt so it kind of pulls some clay out. So again, depending on what brush you want to use, it doesn't really matter necessarily so long as you have it set with the right size, and there you go. So now we have a little bit more going on here. And just so you know, you can come here to your geometry tab. There's a thing called clay polish. And if I hit this button, it kind of like runs, it has got a mask still on it, clear mask, but it kind of runs like this polish, and it kind of like sharpens the edges a little bit. And it's sometimes pretty cool. Not always needed, but especially for something like this where these edges feel like they're almost very sharply carved in, you can get a pretty cool look that way as well. Okay, so there we go. We got the shirt blocked in. I'm gonna go back to the pants here with damn standard, maybe kind of carve in some more lines here just to kind of make it feel like the pants are also kind of bunching up into the belt. And again, the pants are only at 16,000, so I can Control D to subdivide those, right? Just kind of get the same kind of look here, like cloth is kind of folding in there. Okay, do a little bunch in there in the groin area. So now again, just coming in here and just start looking at the cloth. Look at the way, think about the way cloth folds. Look at the picture, get some reference that way. But now we have the orange stuff largely done. We'll do the blue shirt next. Okay, the blue shirt doesn't look like a whole lot going on, but we need to make sure the blue shirt, the sleeves just kind of poke out a little bit past the orange. So let's go to our blue shirt. Now if I hit the N key on my keyboard, N is in Nancy, it'll bring up a little, my subtool palette in my scene, so I can just choose it from there, just so you know, it's a nice little shortcut. So I can kind of grab this and pull this shirt out so that the sleeves kind of poke out past the orange. Okay. And before I do too much with this, I kind of want to do the same thing I did with the orange shirt, which is give it some thickness. So I'm going to come over here to my geometry tab, turn on dynamic subdivision, turn it on. I'm going to keep the smoothness down to 0 and just give myself some thickness just like before. Now, just so you know, I can give myself some thickness, right? But you see here when I do that, it's coming through the shirt. I can go here to where it says offset and offset this into the negative, and it'll kind of like basically make the thickness go inward as opposed to outward. So I can get the best of both worlds. I have a thick shirt, but it's not poking through the other thing. Hit apply, and now I can just hit Control D to subdivide it on my own if I want to. And again, I'm not going to do the crazy detail at the moment. I'm going to subdivide one more time just to give myself a few more points. Hit X to turn symmetry off. That way I can come here with, say, damn standard, or standard brush I should say, and just kind of carve in some lines here. And again, you're going to see very low res still, which is not really the biggest problem right now. I just want to kind of make this feel like it's working as a shirt. I'll get my move brush here and pull out the sleeve a little bit on both sides so that I have something to sculpt on. Okay, like that. Hit Control D one more time, so now I have a few more points. I still only 32,000, so it's not crazy high res, but it allows me to use my damn standard brush maybe a little bit more to kind of give the impression of some little folds here. Right. Remember, hold down Alt to pull out with the damn standard brush. Don't hold the Alt and it'll carve in. You can use any brush you want, obviously, but you know, I'm trying to stick with basic brushes for now, just so we're not getting too bogged down. Control D. So now I have 130,000. You can see here that you're starting to see this a little bit clearer. I can come in here and just kind of carve out some lines here. Hold down Alt to push in. Well, I'm using the standard brush, so Alt in this case pushes in. If I was using damn standard brush, it would be the opposite. But you know how damn standard brush works at this point. Okay. So just roughing in some lines here. All right. So again, just giving yourself some indications here. You can work on the detail as much as you want later on. All right, that shirt is blocked in. So now let's think about what else we need to work on before we start doing really detail. So again, obviously we have to make the little tie for the belt. We need to put the emblem on the shirt, and we need to do the boots. But while we're here in the face, let's select the face. So I'm going to go to my subtool palette and choose the torso or the face, and I'm going to just zoom in here. So the face, he's got a little expression, and the expression is not symmetrical. So I'm going to hit X to turn symmetry off. I have a couple subdivision levels on this character. You can see here I can go up to level 3, but before I'm going to go back to level 2 or level 1 before I do the expression. Look at my move brush. He's got basically just kind of like a little, he's just doing this. Got a little bit of a thing like this, right? So I'm just moving this up a little bit closer to his mouth, making it a little bit more asymmetrical here. Now I'll go up a level. And you can see I can just kind of like smooth out a little bit here, or I can go to my standard brush and lightly kind of build in the indication of a lower lip. Right? And again, I don't really know how he's supposed to look. I know that this is probably not the normal nose. It looks like it got a little bit stretched. So I'm going to go to my inflate brush maybe and just kind of bring out the nostrils a tiny bit. Look at it from underneath and get my move brush and just adjust the shape. You know, and if you follow the character of the show, I think it's a show, you'll know much better than I do what the face is supposed to look like. So, but I'm going to damn standard here. Maybe turn symmetry back on because this is still symmetrical, and kind of carve in on either side of the nose. Maybe just get some lines here. Okay, look at it from the side. Maybe with my move brush, I'm going to kind of give this a little bit more of a nose feel. I'm going to mask this part out, scale it, and kind of smooth that part down. Kind of give it a little bit more of a pointed look there. All right, something like that. I'm going to use a brush called H polish, and what that does is it kind of flattens things. I'm going to kind of like flatten. See how it kind of gave me that little line there? Kind of looking to kind of establish a little bit of that, and I'm going to go here to the ears. This is the last thing for this video. I'm going to get my damn standard brush and kind of carve in a little bit here, just to kind of reestablish the interior part of the ear. Get my move brush and kind of maybe tweak that shape a little bit. Let's get on my damn standard brush and just kind of like emphasize the jawline a little bit. That picture seems to really emphasize that jawline quite a bit, so I want to make sure it's very clear. I'll go to my standard brush and bring out the, I think it's called the sternocleidomastoid, which is like those very large tendony things that come down from there. Right, I'm going to block out his neck a little bit. He does have a pretty significant base of the neck here, so I'm going to get some my inflate brush and kind of bunch that up a little bit. I'm going to go to my standard brush, hold down Alt, and kind of push in at the base here, and then pull this stuff back out. He's got some veiny things happening. You see a little bit of his chest with my clay build-up brush. I'm just going to start kind of like scribbling from left to right to kind of build up a little bit of the striation to the chest muscle. It's still very low res here, so you know, but just want to kind of get that blocked in. Okay, like that. All right. Now I Control D to subdivide one more time, so now you can see it looking a little bit cleaner. Okay, we're going to start working on the arms, just kind of giving them some detail, because everything so far on the arms has been very, very just vague. So let's get our move brush here. I'm going to go here, and we remeshed them previously, but as you can see, it's very, very low res, right? So I'm going to come over here to geometry and hit divide, or just hit Control D, which is a shortcut to divide just once. I want to do this a little bit at a time, and you can see in the picture, obviously there's some definition here, and you do want to kind of pay attention to the way the muscles kind of overlap, because you don't want it to seem too unrealistic. So you can see here that the shoulder muscle does kind of like come down over top of the bicep and the tricep like this. Okay, and again, you can get clay build up or standard and kind of build it up a little bit this way. But mostly I'm going to be using damn standard right now just to kind of carve in the little indentations. Maybe you can go to solo mode to make it easier and carve in the little indentations here, even though it's still very low res. You can see in the forearm muscles, it's like a heart shape. It kind of comes this way and then this way. We have two muscles kind of coming up from different parts and overlapping here. And from the side here, you're going to see, again, there's just a little bit of a couple lines in here. So I'm just, again, we're not trying to be, you know, it's not a medical textbook, but roughly the same idea. Triceps here, we can go to standard and kind of build them up a little bit here. The triceps like a horseshoe shape. Right, it's got a little bit of a separation right here in the back there in the middle. Okay, I'm gonna build a little elbow in there with the standard brush just to kind of give us a little something. And again, we don't have enough points for this to look good yet, but we want to kind of get the overall shape here. I'm just going to build it up a little bit more like that. Okay, so you can see here, maybe on the inside of the forearm, we're going to use standard brush and just going to build it out a little bit more. Okay, there you go. If I get out of solo mode, you can see, you know, you can get your move brush if you need to and kind of like widen that part a little bit here, right? Okay, so I want to kind of have it be a little bit straight on the inside and around on the outside here of the forearm, like so. And again, a little inflate brush just to kind of fill this out a little bit. Okay. Now I hit Control D to subdivide one more time. And again, I'll go to damn standard, because damn standard is kind of the main way to kind of cut in some lines here to kind of give the impression of the muscle groups. Get my move brush and pull that down a little bit. Damn standard again, just to kind of come in here and start again, just defining some of where these areas are going to, these muscles are going to kind of like, are going to be. As you can see here, there's a little, in between there's a bicep here and there's a tricep here, and in between there's a little added muscular group in there. So I'm just going to add that. Get my move brush, and you want to kind of get the bicep to kind of be a little more, a little longer than you might think. People sometimes make biceps look like tennis balls, and they're not. They're really almost like oblongs here. Standard brush again, go back to solo mode, and just kind of build up the forearm muscle just by kind of using the standard brush, leaving behind little areas in between, so that you can either carve in with the standard brush or just use the standard brush and leave behind little crevices, and that should work too. A little inflate on the areas that need to be bulged out a little bit more. You don't want to overdo it. Again, don't make the arm look like it's made out of a bunch of balloons. You want to, in this case, he's a little bit stylized, so the muscles are very well defined, but they're not, they're not ridiculously large, right? So inflate the inside of this forearm, but then let it kind of come in a little bit. So get that shape the way we need it. Probably need to have the little wristbands here slide down a little bit. We want to have a little bit more of the forearm visible. So let's go back to the forearm now. Now I can just kind of adjust this. Using my move brush here, because these arms feel a little bit longer. I want to make sure that the forearm is visible for longer, I should say. I'm going to use my clay build-up brush and just lightly kind of just re-establish where the forearm muscles are. I'm going to go solo mode again. Maybe kind of on the inside here and just kind of build up a little bit of the bicep, a little bit of the tricep here. Right, here's the forearm bone, forearm muscles, and just kind of like, again, don't just be random with it. Think about the actual flow of the actual overlapping muscles here, and use that image, of course, as a guide for where the things go. Okay, now I'll subdivide one more time. Control D, do a light smooth just to kind of push some of that back. And again, inflate to kind of puff stuff out a little bit more smoothly. Damn standard, but you can always go back and forth between the different subdivision levels. So I can go back to level 2 or level 3 if I want to get my move brush and kind of adjust the shape, and then bring it back up, right? So just keep that in mind. You can always go back and forth. Okay, so something like that is a perfectly good place to start. I can get my standard brush. I have almost 100,000 points here, so it's getting a little bit better, and I can kind of come in here, for example, with a smaller standard brush and kind of do like a little bit of a veiny thing here. A couple little areas here where you might want to kind of build that up. You can also hit B for brush and C. You're going to see a brush here somewhere called contrast delta. And what contrast does, basically, it kind of increases. See how kind of it makes the crevices more crevicey and the bulging parts more bulgy. So it kind of like it's like a pass of making the stuff feel a little bit more defined. It's a really cool brush for that. Okay, there you go, something like that. Right, so now what I'm going to do really fast is just go to my paintbrush with kind of a more darkish brownish color, a low intensity here, and just kind of lightly hit some of the recessed areas, just to kind of give kind of like a little bit of a shadowy feel. And this is just for the sake of a demonstration, but I like to kind of come in here sometimes and just hit the little recessed areas with a little bit of a darker color, just to make the muscles stand out more. Now you can see how I'm being a lot sloppier with this, and the reason is because I can just go back in with the actual skin tone and then clean it up. So I'm going to come in here, hover over the actual skin tone, hit C to sample it, and I can just kind of push it back by painting back over it here. But I just want to kind of like leave behind some shadows in those crevices just to make them more noticeable. Okay, like this. And you can see here the bicep might be a little too much, so I'll go back down to level 2 or level 3, get my move brush and just kind of nudge that back a little bit. You don't need to, obviously, go by what you think, but there we go. So arms have been kind of established. And you know, again, I went a little overboard with them, but I just feel that that's kind of the way the character is, so that's what I'm going to do. A little damn standard, maybe kind of like just re-establish some of these little parts. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to call the arms, this part of the arms done anyway. Okay, so making the fists here, this is not going to be exciting. I'm letting you know right now. I'm going to go to the hands and go to solo mode here. And what we need to do basically to make a fist is to do lots of moving of fingers around. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Control and Shift to go to my selection tool. I'm going to start with the index finger. So hold down Control and Shift and click on this little red first joint. Control Shift click again to hide it. I'm going to Control Shift click on the middle and the end joint. So now those are all hidden. Right? I'm going to Control Shift tap and drag off the model, and that's going to inverse my visibility. I want to make this all one polygroup, and the shortcut for that is Control W. Now it's all one polygroup. So what I'm going to do now is mask this out. Hold down Control and just mask it all out. Okay. Now I'm going to Control Shift tap to bring everything back. So now it's masked out and nothing else is. I'm going to Control tap to invert my mask, and now I'm going to bend the finger. So I'm going to my Move tool, W. If you don't see it, no biggie. Hold down Alt and just tap. And I want to, where you want it to go, and I want to make this rotation tool go right at this root of the finger. Now I'm going to just, right here in the middle, okay, and I'm going to rotate the finger like this. See how it kind of collapses? So I'm just going to kind of move it up a little bit, no big deal. Okay, now I want to move it pretty much where the, where that knuckle is going to go. I'm going to hold down Control and mask out to, say, this next knuckle. Hold down Alt and move the pivot point to that next knuckle, and then rotate it from there. And again, have to adjust this a little bit. That's okay. Okay, you might get some weird looking graphic stuff. It's okay. You just because the faces are getting bent, you can kind of scale it up if you need to. Now I'm going to mask out to that second knuckle. Hold down Alt and move this up to that, and just bend it in. So you can see here, I'm just bending in the fingers by masking and moving. There we go. Let's get out of solo mode. Let's put these fists where they belong. So hit the W key. I'm going to move this down so the hands are out a little bit more. Right? Let's hold down Alt and tap on the wrist here so it's where the wrist is. I'm going to rotate it up a little bit. Okay. Rotate it this way a little bit here so it's more in line with what I'm seeing in the picture. Like this. I'm going to probably go to my Move brush and just adjust this position a little bit here. Just change it. Hands might be a little small, so I'll go to my Move tool and scale them up a little bit, just so they kind of fit, because we bulked out the forearms, so let's make sure that everything fits, size-wise. Right, something like this. I'm going to hit C to sample the new color of the arms to make sure that the hands are the same. Now let's hit Control D to get them a little bit of subdivision. You can see here they get really round. So I'll get my Move brush here and just start kind of like, with a smaller Move brush, just start kind of pulling out the knuckles so that they feel less like they're spaghetti, right? I want them to be a little bit sharper. So remember, with the Move brush, you hold down Alt and tap and drag from left and right, and that'll pull the clay toward the camera. So I can just kind of establish a little bit more, of actual definition to the fingers. Okay. And again, these fingers are really small here. Let's go to your inflate brush and just kind of, inflate them up a little bit, kind of make them feel like a little bit more like they're substantial. You can see here again the pinky gets a little bit weird, so I'm just getting my Move brush and just adjusting this a little bit. And again, because these are separate subtools, I can Control Shift click on the pinky, for example, and isolate it if I need to, and adjust it, sculpt it. That's the good thing about polygroups, is that it allows you to isolate parts of a model that are kind of impossible to mask anymore because they're so overlapping, right? So I can kind of like just come in here and then Control Shift tap to bring everything back, and you can see if things get weird here, I can go to my inflate brush, for example. I can kind of inflate this, Control Shift tap on this guy, and adjust the shape a little bit, because sometimes they get a little bit wonky when you bend them. So, Again, I can Control Shift tap on this one finger, mask it, Control Shift tap to bring everything back, and then invert my mask, rotate it, move it however I need to, right? So the same way we did all the fingers. You can isolate them by Control Shift clicking on them. You can mask them out and then bring everything back so that you can kind of move it with everything else visible at the same time. Okay, so let's get my little move brush here and shaping this as best I can. The fingers are always a little bit weird, especially when they're low res and you try and bend them, they get a little bit wonky. So there's always going to be some cleanup with regard to hands. No one likes doing it, but everyone has to do it. So I'm going to inflate brush again, just kind of like, you know, pulls out a little bit more. So divide one more time. And so now again, you can start seeing this starting to come together. There's always going to be a little bit of adjustments though, especially when it comes to kind of defining the knuckles and making them have a little bit more of an angle to them. Otherwise, this is going to look really soft and mushy, which you don't really want for hands. So I move brush nice and big and kind of round out the top of the hand a little bit. At a damp standard, maybe kind of like carve in little indentations of in between the tendon area so that you get a little bit more of a feeling that these hands actually, like, you know, connect to something. Okay, same thing with the thumb. I can Control Shift tap on the thumb and you can see here how small that is. So go to my inflate brush, maybe inflate the pad of the thumb a little bit. Maybe inflate the knuckle a little bit here, right? So now that thumb feels a little more substantive. Get my standard brush and carve it, you know, pull out some clay if I need to, right? But again, it's not going to happen immediately. It's going to be a little bit of an adjustment situation here where you have to kind of get in there and, you know, make it look right. Fists are tough to make because there's a lot of deformation happening, a lot of like skin kind of like being pushed together, and it's kind of hard to make that up out of nothing. So anyway, so now we have some little fists here, and again, you can kind of make them the size and shape that you want, but just know that when you do these fists, it's not going to be an immediate 100% awesome situation. It just needs to be adjusted a little bit, and then you can go to the wristbands essentially and adjust them to cover the connection between the arms and the hands. Alright, so we can just make the boots, just like we made the pants. So you can try and make these feet work, and they'll work just fine, but you can also just make them with new shapes, and I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to have the boots here, and I'm just going to go to my move tool, okay, and I have my W key, and I have my move tool here. I'm going to just center it using the Google Maps icon. I'm going to go to my little gear, I'm going to swap this out for a shape. I'm going to swap it out for my poly cylinder, okay, and it's a little bit big, so I'll go to my little gear and choose my gizmo and scale it down a little bit. Go to my side view. I'll hover over the blue and hit C to sample that color so that when I need to, I can fill it. I'll hold down Shift for my side camera. Again, I shift my camera to the side. I'm going to hold down Shift, and that way I can rotate this exactly 90 degrees. All right, so I'm going to scale this down roughly here, and maybe scale up a little bit. What I want to do basically is turn this into just not the toe part, but just the actual, you know, lower ankle part, right? So I'm going to pop this right here. I'm going to go to my gear and choose taper, and I'm going to taper this in a little bit. Now you can see how it kind of bows in. I want it to be more of a straight shot. This little white cone, if I push this in or pull it out, I can change the way it tapers. So I'm going to push this in so I get no bowing. It's just a solid, you know, straight angle in there like this. Okay, go to my gear, hit accept. So now I have that. I want this little part to go up in the back here, so let's just do that using a deformer. Go to my gear, choose deformer, and now I'm going to come here and just put these little orange cones. I'm going to push this down, push this in. All I want basically is this. I want no middle dots, just this one little row of back dots here. So I'll hold down Control and mask out these back dots, and then Control tap to invert. So now it's just these back dots, and I can just get my little blue arrow and just pull it up. And okay, I can Control tap and drag to clear my mask. Now I'm going to mask out the front dots. You can see here how it's got everyone now but those. Control tap to invert, and now I can just push this down. So basically I'm just isolating the effects of this so I can kind of, you know, adjust the angle without having to worry about pushing and pulling points. I'm going to go to my gear and choose accept. All right, so now I have an approximation of the boot of the shin part. Let's actually bring out the actual foot. I'm going to make it a little bit longer. Okay. Now I'm going to hold down the control key and drag out a copy of this. It sounds like a strange thing to do, but that's what I'm going to do. And now I'm going to change this to a sphere. So I'm going to go to my little gear, and I'm going to choose sphere 3D, which is weird. You can see it's got, if I go to polyframe here, you can see it's got kind of like this, it's like not finished. I can grab this little green cone and finish it if I want, but I kind of don't want that. I'm going to actually bring this down till it's like almost halfway to about there. Okay, and now I'm going to look at some of these other cones here. Okay, so I'm going to go here to my gear. I'm going to choose flatten, and now I'm going to grab this left one and pull this in. So now basically I have, it's half from the top and half from the side. Okay, I'm going to go to my gear, choose accept, and now I'm going to hold down shift from my side view here. I've just set my camera to the side, hold down shift and rotate this 90 degrees. Now I can bring this down and kind of match it up with the boot. Now, of course, I can scale it down in the red to kind of narrow it a little bit. I can scale it, in this case, in the green to kind of, you know, bring that down. But I'm just going to bring it together, and I can kind of scale it up in the blue as well, so they kind of overlap, right? You can see here, if I need to, I can scale it in more in the red. And note that I'm using my camera angles to work for me, right? I'm looking at it from underneath right now, so I can kind of see what I need to do. Scale it out a little bit. Okay, so now I have basically this shape, which is kind of what I'm going for. I might want to kind of smooth this part out here, so I'm going to hold down Control and mask out the bottom part, and then with my Shift key, smooth that part down just to kind of make it less round, right? Now I'm going to Control, tap, and drag to clear my mask, and now I got to actually combine these, right? So I'm going to turn off symmetry, hit X, turn symmetry off, go to my gear, and go to my remesh by union. Remember, this works better with symmetry off for some reason. So I'm going to do that. You can see here again, it kind of sews them together. Now I'll go back to my gear, hit accept, and now I'll just hit Q to make that move tool go away. I'm going to hit X to bring symmetry back on, so now I can remesh this with same, so that it'll rebuild them as a single object. So I'm going to remesh this, and now you can see here, it's all one object. I can go to my move tool. I'm going to hit X to actually, yeah, sorry, X is already on. I'm going to hit my little Google Maps icon to center this. From my side camera, I'm going to hold down Alt so I can move this so that it's in the center here. I'll also hold down Alt, hit my orientation arrow to reorient this. And now I'm going to swivel these out. As you can see, they kind of have, they kind of angled out a little bit, right? Maybe I'll scale them in a touch like this. Okay. Something like this. And again, you can decide for yourself how much you want them to do that. I actually might want to do this. Take a look. I'm going to go to my front view and slide them over a little bit, and then hold down Control and mask out the bottom half, like here. Okay. Hit Q and make that move tool go away. And hold down Control and tap once or twice to blur that mask. And now I'll go back to my move tool. I'll hold down Alt and bring it down here, and then just angle it like this, so it angles a little bit more toward the leg. Okay. Control, tap, and drag to clear my mask. And now you can just adjust the placement of this if you need to. Okay, I'll hit polyframe to kind of turn that off, and you can see here now I have these boots. And again, you can adjust this as much as you need to. I can kind of like, you know, scale them in a little bit, make them a little bit narrower. All right, go here and scale them in the blue if I need to. But at least this is a cleaner shape than it was before. And I'm going to kind of work on giving them some detail, and then we'll add the trim and stuff. Because if you look at the picture, the little red trim, it kind of follows folds and stuff in there. So I want to make sure the folds and stuff are there before I start, you know, doing that. And then I'll just mask and extract that stuff. So you can see here, only 3,000 points in my case. And again, because I remeshed it, it might be different for you, but you know, generally speaking, it's probably pretty low res, which is fine. I kind of want to keep it that way at first. I'm going to go to my standard brush, and I just want to kind of, again, it looks like these boots kind of have a little bit of like a bulge, a kind of a folding thing happening right here, right before the actual foot, like this, and I can hold down Alt and kind of push in here. Again, you can see they kind of like this, they're kind of bunching up around there, it looks to me. I'm looking at this this reference image here. Kind of come up here, add a little fold, go to my damp standard brush, maybe kind of carve in a little bit here as well. Look around the back here, maybe I'll just do a little bit of that as well. Go to standard, kind of pull this out. I just want to avoid going too close to the sole of the boot because I want to keep that nice and flat, right? So again, just something like that for now. I can get my move brush, and again, you can of course adjust this however you see fit. You can kind of like widen it where the calf is going to be, push it in where the where the ankle is, tweak the shape as much as you want. Okay, hit Control D. That's going to subdivide this just once. I'm going to go to my damn standard brush again and just start to do the same kind of a thing. Just kind of come in here, maybe re-establish some of these lines. Hold down Alt to kind of pull out a nice sharp little fold. Right, so just again, look at the reference art. Don't just do it randomly. Kind of like look at what is happening and how things are supposed to be folding when you're doing this. You don't want to just be like doing this and hope that it looks good. You want to take your time with this. So I'm just thinking about how this is folding. That's probably pretty decent. I'm going to hold down Control. Oh, sorry, I'm going to hit Control D again and subdivide one more time. So it's got a little more going on here. And I'm going to do one more Control D. So now I have about 200,000 points. I just want it to be nice and smooth. I can kind of get my move brush if I want and just adjust the folds just by kind of pushing the clay around if I want to. This might be too high res, but we'll see. I want to have a nice number of points because I'm going to mask and extract some of the clay, and it's easier to get a nice mask if you have a lot of points. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm looking from the front like this, and I want to draw a nice straight line right down the middle. Well, that's hard to do, but if I use my lasso, I can do the same trick I use up top here. I'm going to drag out a line like this. Okay, then I'm going to come down here and drag a line like this. So basically I'm masking everything but that line, right? Now I can just Control Tap to invert that mask, and now I have that line. I don't care about the top here, but I am going to get rid of that. So from the side, I'm going to hold down Control and Alt, which is an unmasker. I can just drag out a line like this to clean that off. Okay, it's going through the bottom here as well. So I'm going to do the same thing down here. Control and Alt, drag out a little line like this to clean that. But of course, that means it's not going all the way down here. No biggie. Now I'm going to actually add the lines. So I'm going to hold down Control, not Control and Alt, just Control this time. And I'm going to drag out a line to mask out the top there. And now I'm going to do the same thing down here. So Control, drag out a line, and I want to mask out the bottom and get a nice straight line across the bottom there. All right. So now I have basically this trim. Now before I hit Extract, I want to come up here and hit Sharpen Mask. So it's going to make that mask nice and clean, or as clean as it can be. And now I want to hit Extract. Okay, so we're ready to extract it now. So let's go to Subtool. I'm going to come over here and hit Extract, and we'll see how thick it is. It's very thick, so 0.02, way too thick. Let's go to 0.01 and see how that looks. It's still pretty thick, so I'm going to change this to say 0.007. I'm just guessing here, and we'll see how this turns out. That's better. I'll hit Accept. So now, again, it's got a mask on it still. I'm going to hold down Shift and kind of smooth it down to the mask. That way, kind of the overflow is smoothed down a little bit. I'll clear my mask now, and it's still a little bit wonky, so I'm going to come in here and remesh with half and see what I get. Again, extracted meshes aren't always very pretty, so if you remesh it, you tend to do a little better. Now I'm remeshing by half because it was pretty high res. It needed to be high res at first because the mask needed to have a nice sharp line. That's probably pretty good. Again, we're not going to worry too much about this. There's plenty of things you can do to kind of clean this up. So for example, if I go here to the side, I can go get a nice straight on view here, hold down Control, right, mask out a nice straight line here, Control Tap to invert. Now if I get my move tool here, I can, I'm going to hold down Alt and reorient it, but if I move it so that the angle of this is in the same line as this, I can just scale it in using the red and kind of get a nice straight line just by kind of like forcing the clay into a nice straight line, right? So it's just, that's one way to do it. Again, this is not an exact science, but I can just kind of like try that here as well. So mask that part out, make sure it's not in the back here. I don't care about the back. Okay, and then go to my move tool, hold down Alt and move it over here. I can actually move it this way a little bit first, then scale it just to kind of like straighten it up a little bit. So that's just a way of, again, straightening it up. It's not the best way to do it, but it'll work. Here we go. So I'm just going to go here and choose that reddish color. Fill it. Now it's a little bit too bright in my mind, so I'm just going to knock it down a little bit. Now don't forget though, on the boots there's still a mask, so clear that mask off before things get too too out of hand. I'm going to go back to the pants here, my move brush, and pull them out a little bit. Again, I still have to finish doing the wrinkles and stuff on there, but that's not something you need to watch. You can do them on your own. You know how to sculpt. So just want to kind of make them work together a little bit better. All right, now to make the ropes here, there are a couple of ways of doing it. We're going to use a brush that actually just draws out a rope. But the thing is, it's a different type of brush than we've used before, so we're going to try and kind of work around that a little bit without getting too kind of like carried away with a brand new thing. So what I want to do first is create something that's going to kind of give this, basically I'm going to draw out a line for the rope to go around the foot, and I want to kind of give the line a nice easy path to follow. So what I mean by this is I'm going to tell ZBrush where to put the rope. I'm going to grab my boots here. I'm going to duplicate my boots. So now I have a duplicate version of these boots. It's very important that we duplicate this. Let's go to solo mode. I'll hit Shift F, which is the shortcut to turn my little poly frame off and on. And I'm going to come over here to my geometry tab, and you see, remember, I subdivided this a bunch of times. I'm going to bring this back down to say level 2. I'm going to hit delete higher and delete lower, which means I'm getting rid of all the subdivision levels over level 2 and all the ones below level 2. So now it's just one level subdivision. Doesn't matter because we're not going to use these boots as actual boots. We're just going to use this as a guide for the rope that we're going to bring in. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to bring in what's called a curve brush, and the curve brush just drags out a shape, a line, and puts clay on it. And there are a bunch of different curve brushes that already exist, and one of them that we have puts rope on it. But I have to tell ZBrush where to put the rope. So I'm going to tell it how to kind of frame this mesh with the rope. First thing I want to do is I'm only going to do it on one side and then mirror it over. Symmetry might make this not work so well. So what I'm going to do first is, you can see symmetry's on. I'll tap the X key to turn symmetry off. And I'm going to hide this one on the left hand side. So the way to hide it is Control and Shift, which is our selection tool. So Control, Shift, and Alt, all three buttons. Okay, Control, Shift, and Alt. And then drag a big red rectangle over this, making sure that symmetry is off. If it's still on, this won't work. Okay, so I'm going to hide that. It's hidden. Now I'll come up here and choose Delete Hidden. So now I just have one boot, so I can just work at one time. So what I want to do is I want to have two different poly groups. Remember, we've used poly groups a bunch of times in this video. I want to have two different poly groups and tell ZBrush to use the border between them as the place to put the rope, which means I need to have the border between these two poly groups be on the angle that this rope is. So how do I do that? Well, let's go to Control and Shift. That's going to go to our selection tool. I'm going to tap on my selection rectangle option. You can see you have a bunch of changes, a bunch of options here. We've already used the select lasso earlier. And the one that I'm going to choose, it's very important to choose the right one here, is the one called the slice curve. Okay, what the slice curve does is it allows me to drag out a line, and it'll slice the mesh into two separate poly groups. So if I hold down Control and Shift, I can now tap and drag my brush. And you see as I move it, it's snapping in like 5 degree increments. So if I want to stop that, I'm going to let go of the Shift key only, and now I can move it around a little bit more. So I'm just going to come here and just write it like this and just let go. And you're going to see here what it's done was it's kind of like, you know, gotten rid of the, it's kind of given me a little bit more of a, two different poly groups. It's not really exactly the way I want it to, so I'll hit Control Z to undo. Let's kind of maybe get to a good side view and try it again. That's better. So I want to have the rope kind of like tuck in where this little indentation is. So I'm just going to draw it one more time, and that's fine. So now I have, as you can see, two different poly groups and a nice straight line between them. Okay. So now, before I forget, let's hit Control and Shift and come up here and tap and make this our select rectangle again, because we don't want to use that without meaning to. So how do I put the rope here? Well, I need to tell ZBrush to line this perimeter with the rope. I have to get my rope brush. So this is my light box. Let's go to our light box, and we're going to go up here and choose brush so we can get to our brushes, because it's not in our regular brush palette. It's up here in our light box. And it's in a folder of curve brushes. So you can see here there's a folder here called curve. So double tap on that. And you're going to see a bunch of different things. Things like chains and straps and eyelashes and lace, all kinds of stuff, shoelaces. And you're going to see they have a couple of different rope brushes here. It's kind of important. Make sure you choose this one here. The one that says RS rope brush. This one is way too high res. It's going to be just too much. So I'm going to choose this little rope brush here. And you can also choose this one here, by the way. This this rope brush here, but I'm going to choose this one and just double tap, and you can see I have this brush. Now the way this works is typically you just tap and drag out a line, and it's just going to put, you know, a rope on there. But what I want to do instead is tell ZBrush to do the work for me and put a nice line right around this border. So this is a curve brush, and all of the curve brushes functions can be accessed through a menu up here called the stroke menu. I'll come down here and you can see we have a bunch of curve related things here. Curve, curve functions, curve modifiers. Let's go to curve functions and open that up. There's a little thing here called frame mesh, which means it's going to put a little curve right wherever you tell it to, whether it be on an open border of a mesh, or the polygroup border, or a creased edge, which don't worry about that. But let's go ahead and turn off border and polygroups and just keep on our polygroups. I'm sorry, border and creased edges, and keep on polygroups, and just hit frame mesh. And you're going to see that line goes right there. Now, when I tap on here, it's going to bring in the rope. I'm going to turn off polyframe so you can see this better. I'm going to also choose a color that's more ropey. But the size of the rope is going to be based on your draw size. So if I tap on here, you see it's giving me a rope, and that might be the size that I want, but if you want to make this size a little bit bigger or smaller, come up here, adjust your draw size, bigger or smaller, and then tap on that curve, and you'll see it'll update for you. Okay, so I think probably in between. I'm going to use a draw size of 25, and that's pretty good. Now I can barely see it, but that's okay. I'm going to get rid of this boot anyway. Now this little curve is still active and still going to cause trouble, so I want this curve to go away. To make it go away, just come up here on the main part of the mesh, the boot, just tap, and I'll make that go away. Then come down here and choose split unmasked points, so that the rope is now on its own thing. And I'm going to go to my boot here and just hit delete, because I already have my actual boots. Now if I get out of solo mode, you can see there's my rope. It's a little tucked in there, so I'll get my move brush, and again I can hold down the Alt key and tap and drag to kind of pull it toward the camera, right? Or just drag it from the right angle. I'll pull it out like this, and now I have the rope where it needs to be. Now it's got a couple little pieces sticking out there, and for that we're going to actually use it in its normal way. So I'm going to stay on the rope here, go back up here, and you can see here I go to my brush now. Any brush I've used recently will still be up here. So I'm going to choose the rope brush here. I have my brush size set to say 23 or so, and I'm going to tap and drag a little line. You can see here how it just drags out that little piece of rope. I'm going to need to hold down. I'm going to come up here and just tap somewhere on the mesh to make that little dotted line go away. Go to my move brush and just adjust it a little bit so it kind of falls down. You can see here it's got an open end. We'll fix that in a minute. I'll go to my move tool, hold down Control, and just drag out a copy and just rotate it around. Right, something like this. So it looks like, you know, it's tied there. There's also a little knot, but we'll fix that later on. Okay, so let's kind of make these things kind of come together like so. Hit Q to make that go away, Control, tap, and drag to clear my mask. Now I'm going to close these holes. So I'm going to come up here and choose Close Holes. And now we're good. Alright, so we have our rope here, and again, we can just add a little sphere and just kind of carve it in, make it look like a rope, make it look like a little knot. But we have this one here. I'm going to rename this Ropes, and then I'll come down here and hit Mirror. I'm going to make sure that I merge it into one subtool. Hit OK. Now it's all there, right? So now we got our ropes. All right, let's work on the belt now. We don't have a whole lot left to worry about outside of like some details and stuff. So let's do the belt. And the belt is just a cylinder right now. And you can see here if I go to polyframe, it's got some decent left to right, up and down resolution. So if I go to my standard brush, turn symmetry, make sure it's off, and I'm just going to kind of come through here and just kind of start. Again, it's very low res, but I always want to start at this low res so that when I subdivide it, I'll have something to kind of like bring already to the high res mesh. I don't want to start from nothing when the high res mesh is created. So just going through and just roughly, you know, blocking in some folds. Go to my damn standard brush so that I can kind of carve in a little bit here and there. And again, it's too low res for anything big, but we can get some interesting starting points here. So I'm just kind of carving in, going down Alt to bring the damn standard brush out, right? A little shift, a little smooth, just to kind of like get rid of the hard edges there. Yeah, I'm just being very gentle with the smooth. Now I hit Control D, which is a shortcut to subdivide. And you can see here, it does a pretty good job of transferring those very rough details up into the higher res mesh. It just already looks a lot better, I think, than if I were to do that with the subdivisions first. I'm just going to kind of like again, I'm just holding down, I'm using the damp standard brush, carving in, and then holding down Alt to bring it out if I need to. Okay, something like so. And again, like you can decide for yourself how much you want to do it. This is, if looking at the picture, it's got lots of like folds in it. So I'll Control D one more time, and again, damp standard brush, kind of carve in a little bit here, hold down Alt to pull out, right? And I can just kind of go back and forth. So that's kind of the goal here, is to have clean folds and not have it be too messy, you know. So I'm just throwing it in there like that. Okay, so again, you can just hold down Alt and push in this case, or just do a normal brush stroke and you're all set. Okay, so there we go, we got that. Now it's got you know, a little knot and a couple of little folds here. So I've already subdivided this, so I can't very well go and insert a mesh on there because it won't let me do that. So I'm going to choose something that I haven't subdivided yet, which should be something like this orange shirt, which I don't think I have, but I've only divided it once, and that low res version I'll never use, so I'll just hit delete lower. Now you can also just insert a mesh using your subtool palette. Let's just do that. Let's come here and just hit insert a sphere, and I'm going to scale it way down, because when you insert a sphere, it just drops it straight into your scene. The scale of the object is kind of hard to predict. Hover over the belt, hit C to sample that same color, and I'm just going to make this into a knot. So look at from the side view, kind of scale it in this way. I'm going to go here to taper, I'm going to widen it at the top like this. Accept that. Now I'm going to hit X for symmetry and go to my move brush and just come here and just kind of push this in like that, just to kind of like flatten the sides a little bit here, and then turn symmetry off. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of like flatten the bottom of this a little bit here like that, just to kind of make this a little bit more like so. And I'm going to kind of turn this into basically like a bunch of wraps. So I'm going to need to, for this, it's weird to say this, but for something this small, but I'm going to subdivide this quite a bit. Control D, Control D. This has about 130,000 faces. I'm going to hit X to turn symmetry off. And now what I'm going to do is, I might subdivide this actually one more time. So I have 500,000 just for this little knot. But what I'm going to do is, I'm going to mask out with my mask lasso a line like this, and then hit sharpen mask. You see how I have that? What I'm going to do now is Control Tap to invert my mask. And I'm going to come here to my deformation tab and go to my inflate brush and move it to the left to kind of push it in. You can see here basically it's going to give me a real sharp line there. Okay. Now, I'm sorry, but my cat is just sitting on my keyboard, which is why that happens. Go back to my knot. There it is. All right. So now I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to hold down Control and Alt, and unmask this much. Maybe a little bit more. Now I'll go to sharpen mask and then invert that, and I'll inflate this a little bit to kind of build that up. And now I'm going to clear my mask and then hold down Control and mask out everything but, say, this little area, sharpen it, and then go to inflate and negative that a little bit here. So again, basically I'm just using this as a really easy, quick way to get like these kind of overlapping folds without a whole lot of work. Okay, I'm going to move this into here to kind of create a little knot look here. Looks like it's kind of on an angle. Scale it down a little bit. And again, like the way that it looks like this belt is kind of has like overlapping parts, and that's what's happening. That's what's like kind of like tying together. I'm not really going to concern myself too much with being exact with this. I just want this to feel like it's kind of got some folds in it, and we'll go from there. Okay. Right. So I want to kind of flatten this bottom part a little bit more. There you go. So that it's not quite so weird. And on the sides here, these round sides are bothering me, so I'm going to kind of mask out that little area here and push it in. I'm going to go down to a lower subdivision level so there are fewer points. That way I can make more large scale changes. Just kind of push that in a little bit like that. And do the same thing over here. I'm going to mask out these little areas and then smooth it down, push it in, smooth it. just to kind of flatten those edges out a little bit, and then I'll go back to the higher res and you can see that everything still remains. I just have much more sharp edges. I'm going to come here to my subtool palette, hit insert. I'm going to insert a cube. It doesn't matter, like I said, I'm going to replace it with a different cube anyway. The cubes that you get when you insert have these weird points at the top and they're terrible. So I'll go to my little gear and choose polycube. You can see here now I have a nice 4x4x4 cube. What I care about is to have a bunch of vertical subdivisions. So I'm going to go to my green cone and pull this down to like 16 or so. Then I'll go back to my gear, go back to my gizmo, and I'll scale it down in this direction, scale it in this direction. You can see where I'm going with this. I'm just going to kind of make this into something that looks a little bit like this. I'm going to go to my gear and go to taper, and I'm going to pull this in a little bit this way to kind of taper it. I'm going to grab my little white cone and crank it down so it doesn't have that bow in it. So I'm going to keep it like that. There we go. Go to my little gear again, hit accept. So now I have this little one here. I'm going to pop this over to one side. Doesn't really matter. I'm going to just make them both really quickly. I'm just going to do one and then just duplicate it. So I'll go to my gear again and choose my trusty bend curve. I have three little orange dots here, which I can then use to kind of, you know, bend it out like this and so forth, right? It looks pretty quick and easy. I'm going to kind of make it go into that little knot. Remember, I can go here and grab these little white arrows and kind of change the scale. I can also, if I grab this, go to the orange one and twist it a little bit, get a little bit of a twisty thing happening there. Okay, something like so. Go to my gear, hit accept, just pop it wherever I want it to go, and then I'm going to hold down Control and just drag this out. And obviously, you know, it's going to be the exact same one, which is not ideal, but for speed purposes, I'm just going to kind of try and make it look a little bit different instead of making another one. You could make another one if you wanted to, because it would make more sense to do so instead of having it be the exact same thing. But just for the sake of not having you have watched me do this video forever, I'm just going to kind of scale it down here. Let's actually go and scale down vertically a little bit here so that it's just a little shorter. Maybe I can get away with using another bend curve on here, but it's a little tricky sometimes when you're using a bend curve on something which has already been bent. But we can probably get away with it. So let's just go here. I think I can twist it to kind of get it back the way I want it to go, like so. Pop it in there. Okay, there you go. So just maybe I'll bring it down like this so it feels like it's kind of very different look, like so. Okay, go to my gear, accept. Okay, get out of polyframe mode, clear my mask, and just, you know, pop it in there. Again, you can just push it back so it feels like it's coming out of there a little bit more. I'll just hit D to kind of give it that dynamic subdivision look so it gets a little bit smoother. Okay. So I can subdivide this too. So I can divide it a couple times if I want to. Just if you need to, if you're looking to kind of add a little bit of little folds and stuff here, I go my damp standard brush and kind of carve in here, hold down Alt and pull out a little bit there, right? Just to kind of give it the look of a little bit of a folds, right? And again, like this is obviously something you can adjust as much as you want to. Okay, there you go. I hit pause and I just went through and did a little bit of tweaking to it just to make it look a little bit better, but you'll need to notice, you know, just watch all that. So there we go, belt's done. So we have a couple minutes left before we get the 5-minute mark. So I'm just going to I'm going to fill it with that blue first of all. Let's go to the wristbands and just subdivide them a couple times really quickly. Go to our damp standard brush and do the same kind of a thing, right? We can just come in here and just kind of carve in here, hold down Alt and kind of pull out little lines, just to kind of give this the appearance of some folds, right? And again, I'm being a lot faster than you should be, but I'm just trying to speed up the process here of the videos, so you can see where I'm going with this. However, so the last thing we're going to do before we kind of just do the finished stuff like the little icon and stuff, I just want to go back to the face and kind of do the little eyelashes parts, the kind of little lines around the eyes, do a little painting, and then call it a day. So on the torso here, I'm going to make sure I have lots of points. So I have about 1.5 million. Again, the torso really is just the head. So I just want to kind of come here to the eyes he's got what looks like kind of like almost like an eyeliner thing going on at the bottom here. So I'm going to basically paint that on. Hit B for brush and then P for paint. And you can get our paintbrush, but you can also hit B for brush and then hit S. And you're going to see we have like these brushes down here, SO. This is by Shane Olson, who's an artist he worked for Disney, and he has some really cool brushes. One of them is called hard paint, and it's basically a marker. So if I go here and choose black as my color, you can see here I can kind of just basically paint on black. Now what I want to do is make this nice and clean. So I could use a mask, but I can also go here to stroke and turn on lazy mouse, and then and the lazy radius should be set to about 30 or so. What that's going to do is it's going to give me a little red line that drags behind my brush and kind of smooth out my stroke. Now if I go up here and crank the lazy radius up even more, then it's going to smooth it out really far. And that little red line is going to drag right behind my brush and just keep the stroke nice and smooth, because it's kind of like a delay in the stroke. And that way I can kind of drag it out, and if my pen wiggles at the end, it won't really show up there. So I'm just going to kind of do that. And again, I don't know for sure whether he has lines all the way around. I feel like maybe he does. So I'm just going to kind of come here and start and drag out a line here. You might need to do a little bit of, trial and error, undo and try again until you get it. I'm just going to do the best I can here. And again, the length of this line might be too much, but it just helps kind of really average out your stroke to the point where you can kind of really kind of control what you get. So I'm just coming in here and trying to get a little bit more of that around there. There you go. There you go. So it just kind of helps make the eyes pop a little bit more. So let's take a look here at the little symbol on his shirt. We're going to do that, and we're going to do it very, very quickly. So let's come up here. I'm going to come here and hit Insert. I'm going to choose Cylinder 3D. I'm going to make it white, and I'm going to go to my Move tool and go to my gear and choose. It doesn't really matter which one I'm going to choose. Actually, I'm not even going to choose anything. Let's just leave this one. I'm going to hold down Shift and rotate it 90 degrees exactly, and then bring it to the front here. What I want to do is go to polyframe so you can see how this looks like a little pie, which I don't want, because that little dot in the middle is going to make it really, really hard to paint. So I'm going to remesh this. I'm going to hit X to make sure symmetry is on, and then hit Z remesher, same, and go ahead and remesh it. So you can see here it kind of gives me a much more even distribution of points. But for this to look good, it needs to be very, 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 very high res, because I'm going to be painting a very subtle symbol on here. So I have 954 points. I'm going to hit Control D, Control D. I'm going to paint this to about 1 million. Okay, now I went online and I found an image of the symbol on that shirt here. So I'm going to go to my paintbrush, B, then P, and then grab my paintbrush. I want to set it to drag rectangle. I want to make my alpha to nothing. And I want to make sure my RGB intensity is all the way at 100%. And my focal shift is at -100. That way it's not going to have any fuzzy edge. I want to make sure I turn symmetry off. I don't want to have 2 of these. Now, I'm not going to bring in an alpha. I'm going to bring in a texture. So I'm going to go to up here to texture. Actually, I can do it right here. Go to texture and just choose import. And I want to find that picture. So here's that picture. I'm going to make sure I select it so it's listed right here. And now I'm going to come here right smack dab in the middle and drag it out. You want to make sure that your color is set to white. That way it gives you a true version of that picture. Now, is it perfectly centered? Probably not, but it's close enough. So it's not close enough. I need to get it right in the center. So let's try that again. There we go. All right. So that'll probably work. Go to my Move tool. I'm going to move this into place. Obviously, symmetry, like I said, is turned off. And I'm just going to rotate it. Again, it's not going to fit perfectly on there. Obviously, it's on clothing, which is a little bit on the wrinkled side. But what I'm going to do is put it where it needs to go and then push the cloth behind it. That's all. So very simple. Just going to put it right about there. This kind of looks like where it is. This little area right around here. Okay, like that. Go to the shirt and get my hit X, turn symmetry off in case it is on. With my move brush, I'll hold down the Alt key and tap and drag from right to left, and that'll just push the folds behind it. All right. So I do want it to feel like it's right up against it, so I'll pull the shirt out where I need to, and then push it back in where I don't want it. But I want it to feel like it's close on there, so that should work pretty well. Okay, so for the most part, we're going to call this one done. What I did basically in between videos, I went through and I just did a little painting. I did a little bit more adjustments to things like the folds. These are definitely not like the picture. I'm just kind of playing around with my own version of them just because I want to kind of try out some different things. But little things you want to make sure that you kind of finish up. You'll see here that there's a little bit more like detail and dark lines here. What I did here is up under render, there's a little thing called Preview AO. AO stands for Ambient Occlusion. It's kind of like contact shadows or shadows in areas that are kind of crevicey. If I turn this off, you'll see here, it looks like clay. But when you turn it on, all the little crevices tend to get a little extra shadowy, which for this kind of character I think really works very well. So I just turned it on. I adjusted the radius is how wide the occlusion is, so I just turned it down a little bit so that it was not quite so intense. But it just kind of does a really cool way. It's a really cool way to emphasize sometimes the shadowy areas of this. So I thought that was kind of useful. So all I'm going to do is just take a look at things that need to be adjusted. So for example, the hands, we worked on roughing them out, but we didn't do anything with them. So again, this is where you don't need to necessarily have a video to show you the process, because really all we're doing is going in here and making some adjustments to the shape. Standard brush to kind of build up the knuckles a little bit. And just adjust those things, but you don't want to skimp on anything. So once you have the basic shapes done, then you want to get in there and start actually finishing things, making them look like they're finished. And this is one of those things where it's easy to kind of call it a day, but I would just strongly suggest that you start looking around and finding the things that you can adjust. So for example, here looks like the adjustments we made, some of the fingers made the pinky and the ring finger too big, so I'm just scaling them in a little bit. But subdivide these a little bit, go to standard or clay buildup or dam standard or whatever, and kind of come in here and start maybe doing some little indications of folds and stuff like that in between the knuckles. Again, give this sculpt the indication of finality of some finished details and stuff. So for the most part though, the videos hopefully covered most of what you need to kind of pick up on in terms of new techniques and processes to kind of create your character, and hopefully this was helpful and useful. I'm going to turn on perspective here, turn on the floor, kind of put him in roughly the same position. Hit BPR or Shift R to kind of get a render of this guy so we can see where we end up. Okay, so here we are. Hopefully this was useful in showing you the process of building a character from scratch. And there we go.